relationships and people are key. Like, the key to anything is to build solid relationships, be talking to people, which is one of the biggest reasons I'm here. I'm here to connect with people and to really like learn about them and to be giving to them, because people aren't interested in what you want. They're like, everybody is selfish, and like it's a sad truth, but really by giving to people what they want, then they like you and they trust you. And that's really the key to building anything.
Hey, Rudder Nation. Welcome to another episode of Beyond the Rut, the podcast that shares encouraging stories and practical tools to help pull you out of your rut into a life worth living in the areas of your faith, family, and career. I'm your host, Jerry Dugan, and in this episode, I'm bringing to you a conversation I had at Podcast Movement 2022 with Ken Carfagno and his son, Kenny Carfagno. Now, the cool thing about Ken is that he was a corporate employee on a track to be an executive leader someday, but he hung that up to become the owner of a cleaning business, and he's now the founder and owner of Smart Cleaning School. In this episode, we're going to be talking about his father-son connection, the legacy that a father can leave with his son, and choosing family over business. With all that, we also get to hear from Kenny and the lessons he's learned from seeing his father and his mother run a business for pretty much his whole life. Because when Ken left his job to become the owner of a cleaning business, Kenny was just a baby. So we're going to hear that story on a deeper level. We're going to link it back to an old episode that we did together, both Ken and I, when we met at another podcast movement over in Nashville in 2021. And it's just it's a great conversation. So sit back, relax, bust out a notebook. Here we go. All right. I am here with Ken Carfagno and his son, Kenny Carfagno. And if that name sounds familiar to you, it's because 1 year ago, Ken and I did episode 299. We recorded that episode. You're like, wait, the math doesn't add up. And that's right, because when we did that recording, I had 20 episodes ahead of it. It finally aired as episode 299, and episode 300 was when Ken flipped the script on me and interviewed me for the show. And so we're here at Podcast Movement 2022 in Dallas, Texas, just down the road from home for me, and I guess down the country for y'all, because you're from the East Coast. So here we are again. How are you guys doing?
Oh, we're doing great. It's great to be here in this booth right now with my oldest. My oldest son is with me.
Yeah, this is going to be fun.
Yes. So what we didn't tell Ken is we're going to tell all the embarrassing stories of your dad, right?
Yes, let's do
all
it.
Right, here we go. So the roasting of... No, I'm kidding.
That's okay. Wait, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to turn the interview back on me now.
The switcheroo.
Plot twist.
This is going to be fun, Kenny. This is going to be awesome. So when Ken and I were on the show, if you remember it vividly, like it was episode 299, he and I were talking about like our dreams and our vision of like what family life should look like for us as men. Ken was pursuing a corporate leadership role. He was being developed for it, trained for it. And one day you had that presentation from an executive that just got asked the question that probably was not supposed to be asked by any leader in any company. And that was, what's your family life like, sir? And
pin drop in the room, man.
Yeah. And that guy, the executive, you said in that episode, and guys, go back, beyondtherut.com/299. And I only remember that, by the way, because my episode was 300 and I just minus one, and that's how you get there. So it's all math, guys. So anyway, the shoulders of that executive who was all pumped up about the direction of the company slumps down and he says to the crowd, if you want to do what I do, don't expect to have a personal life. And that was like the wake up call for Ken. That was like, I don't want to be like that guy. I thought I did. That is not what I want. I don't want to look back and realize I don't live at home with my wife and that my kids don't know who I am. That's got to be different. And that was like your disengagement from then until they fired you, which was
exactly
2 years later. 3
years later.
That is some serious survival, by the way.
It was. Thank you.
Because I would have fired you within 6 months. Like, hey, Ken, you're not cutting it. Do you want to be here? No, I don't. All right.
Yeah, well, I
go
gradually
do the thing you want to do.
slowed down how often I was showing up on time.
Yeah, no, I'm too nice a guy. I wouldn't have fired you in 6 months.
But it
would have been like 3 years.
It was a couple things, though. It was certainly that was a huge piece. And then within a week, I mean, this is God getting a hold of me and saying, like, grab me by the neck collar and say, dude, listen to me. Here's this. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, and then it was okay, honey, let's watch a movie. Movie night, let's watch The Family Man, which is my favorite movie.
Mm-hmm.
Well, It's a Wonderful Life, then The Family Man. Have you ever seen The Family Man with Nicolas Cage?
Oh, that one. I thought you were talking about the cartoon.
No. No, not that one.
Sorry, no, I got to go back and watch that movie then. Yeah, homework.
The Family Man. Come on, people out there beyond the right. You ever seen this?
How many of you rolled your eyes at me just now? Just raise your hand.
Family Man. Nicolas Cage. Remember this? He's a highfalutin executive president of the company. Points to the wall. But he had this memory. He had a girlfriend from college, and he was going on a internship for the summer. And she said, "Don't go. And there was this moment at the airport, and he says, "I'll just be gone for a little bit." And they were super close, and they would have gotten married, had a family. And he comes back, and they don't connect.
Really?
They don't connect. And he goes on, and he pursues.
How long was he gone?
I think the summer.
2 days.
They were maybe
they weren't that close.
Then he comes back. And he just goes and pursues the career. He poured all in. He became that executive that said, "If you want to have my life," he became that guy, president of the company. And you see the life he was living. He had the Lamborghini. He had all the money, but he was so alone. On Christmas Eve, a strange woman, I guess one that he knew, would come knock on the door and come in. And that was his Christmas. And he loved this life, but that's all he had. He was alone. And then he went into this convenience store. You have not seen this?
I have not seen this. Yeah.
He goes into a convenience store to get eggnog or something, right? And there's a robbery in progress, but it was staged, like a God coincidental kind of staging.
Okay.
And he goes and tries to stop the robbery. And then what happens is the guy that was pretending to hold up the store, he ends up like, "Dude, you don't get it." Like, "What do you mean I don't get it?" He says, You've just earned yourself a gift." He's like, "What do you mean?" "I'm going to give you a glimpse." Like, snap the finger. And then he's like,
cool.
Whatever. Goes back to his room, wakes up, and now that girlfriend, he's married to her. There's 2 kids, and he's a dad. He's just dropped from this position in the corporate world. He's dropped into family life, being a dad.
Yeah.
And now he's had, I guess it's about a month. He's got a month where he's getting to live the life he would have had if he had not left his sweetheart.
Okay.
And it's so amazing to see this life, because it just shows you the difference between that corporate rut, even though he enjoyed it, that rut he was in, to what his life could have been like. And then it gets depressing at the end, because it's, he has to go back to his old life and he loses it. And then they find a way at the end to try and make it a happy ending. But just the movie just spoke so much to me. I'd seen that movie right at the same time as that executive told me those words. And those were a couple of those big straws, like boom, boom, and then the camel's back, however that expression goes.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And then, so you wound up disengaging. Eventually, 3 years later, they catch up to you.
Gone.
Like, they let you go. And I love, like, the rest of the story was you got home and your wife's like, that sounds nice. You got, like, 6 houses to clean tomorrow, by the way, because she had started a cleaning business.
There's a lot more to it than that.
Yeah. That would have been great, though.
Generalize it. Like, that's the story I tell at the office. Like, "Oh, yeah, this guy, Ken, which I probably shouldn't tell to my team, because then they're like, "Hey, wait, what are we doing here then?" It's like, guys, fast forward this part if you're listening.
Right.
You love working for Jerry. You love working for Jerry.
Jerry is the best. He is the best. And this guy next to me,
Kenny,
was 10 months old.
You were the baby in the
He
arms.
was the baby.
Okay.
He was the baby. He's no longer.
Wow.
He's taller than me now.
Yeah. Yeah. And how old are you now, Kenny?
I am 17.
17. High school.
Yes.
Senior year?
Yes, it is.
All right. Cool. That was a good guess. 50-50 shows. Junior, senior.
Yeah, pretty much.
Somewhere in there.
Yeah. Awesome. And so, Kenny, you've seen your dad, like, him as a business person, self-employed at first, running a business, eventually the business changing over time. What would you say are some of the lessons you picked up from seeing your dad and your mom run a business like that, as opposed to a 9-to-5 job?
Well, what I've really gotten to see is the freedom that they have earned slowly over this time. And just, like, it's a different perspective than, like, a lot of the kids my age are seeing. Like, they see their parents going to work, doing all that, doing their 9-to-5. But I get to see this whole new world, and I see so many more options. Like, you tell me, Dad, that when you were my age, that you were, like, you saw your parents going to work, and like that's all you thought were the options were. But now I see, like, there's these 2 different worlds, and I can choose the freedom of a business, or I could choose to have a job. But it's my choice. And I can, like, that's what I really have loved about growing up in this environment.
If you do get a 9-to-5 job, like you at least understand like some of the boundaries and the things that are at stake.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's something I tend to surprise people about. That I don't want to put 70 hours of work into the office. I could, but at the end of the day, when I die, I don't want to be like, I was known for answering all my emails. Woohoo.
You want to make an impact in the world.
Right?
People to remember you.
To
come to your funeral. Like, who are all these people? They're people that you made an impact on with the things that you did with your life. Not just that I made money or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. I know people who prided themselves on coming into the office on a Sunday to check their email or to sign off on timesheet. And it's like, wow, but didn't your son have a football game that day? Or like, hey, didn't your family go to church and you came to the office? It's like,
So, funny related / unrelated thing. We're taking the airplane down from Philadelphia to Dallas, and we got rerouted because there was a massive flood on Monday. So
we needed that rain here, by the way.
I'm sure you'll take it. We didn't need to be stranded in Arkansas for 2.5 hours.
No, there are better states you could. I'm sorry, Sean. I'm just kidding.
And I'm sorry, Billy, if you're listening.
They're going to hate us.
We were stranded, but here's what was interesting. This guy, you know what he's watching? What show is he watching? Like 12 episodes of. He's laughing. What'd you watch?
I watched The Office.
Oh man!
So
it's so funny.
The epitome of the rut. The epitome of the rut is the show The Office.
Yeah,
Dwight.
Oh,
right.
Yes,
and so he's watching this the whole time on the plane. And wouldn't you know it, that just a few days later, you're on an interview with a podcast that's getting out of the rut, and you saw people, and you think it's funny.
Yeah,
but there are people like that's their life. That really is their life. That's why I was explaining to you. It's funny to me because I used to be in that desk and I experienced that rut. You think it's funny because they're just goofballs, right? Right, Jerry?
Yeah, that's so true.
I have seen some of those scenes actually
Me
done
too.
in real life. Like training events or people raiding the fridge in the break room. And you're like, that is a TV show, right? Did that just happen here in real life? So it blows my mind. I guess it's like it's art imitating life in a sense. It's like some of the funnier things that happen in the office that cross boundaries and so on. But yeah, that is something right there. But yeah, I think freedom is a really important thing that you picked up on because you see that now you were homeschooled or
So like it's another thing too because it's like the two worlds again. Like there's the world of going to school. It's almost like a kid's 9-to-5.
Yeah.
And then I have homeschool, so I still have that freedom. I've gotten to experience that freedom throughout all my school years. Yeah. So that's just like a preview of what it'd be like to be an entrepreneur.
And it's kind of neat in a sense, so the almost some people think that not going to a regular school is a double-edged sword. I mean, we sent ours to public school mainly because we just didn't want to do it. And so it was like that. We're like, okay, but we got to be prepared to talk to them about the things they experience in school. Like they're going to see a dark side of life and we're not going to be as close during the day. So we got to be intentional at night when they get home. Which, by the way, before the industrial age, parents and their kids were side by side a lot. Unless, one of the parents took off on a voyage for months or years. I mean, in a gregarian society that was agricultural, the kids were on the farm just like mom and dad. And, if you worked in an office, kids were in the shop.
And Son.
Yeah.
That was the name of the businesses downtown.
Yeah.
Right. And Son.
Jerry and Son.
Sanford and Son.
Ken and Son. Sanford and Son. Oh, man. You've never seen that show, have you?
No, he has no idea.
Red Fox.
I got something I think is a good kind of tangent off of the legacy piece. Something that I have been really pondering, and it's been formulating like a life goal, a life mission. And because we did this interview last year, we touched on so many topics. We dug into family, into work, into health, into spiritual. And I know that your audience, there are a lot of Christians in the audience.
Yeah.
And so yeah, exactly. So I want to share this with you. Me being a Christian, me personally having a goal, my wife and I, that we are disciples. It's like, that's very important to us. We're a follower of Jesus. And this is something that, like, when I ask the question, what is like your life's mission? And I think about it, when I see our first son coming up to age to become an adult, like, wow, this is actually happening. And he's following Jesus just like we are, just like we've prayed. And this is what we have desired, a life of time and freedom. Not that we've achieved a hyper level of it, but we've been home. We've been able to pour into our children for as many years as God has allowed us to. And so here's the life vision and mission that my wife and I have. And it's for Teresa, my wife Teresa, for Teresa and I to see our children following Jesus to the 4th generation.
Oh, wow.
To see our children following Jesus to the 4th generation. And I share that because it opens up like different avenues of ruts people can be in. So first of all, when I say that, okay, that means that the math on that's not really good. Like, okay, 4th generation, that means I'm a great-great-grandfather.
Yeah.
And to see them following Jesus, that means I'd like to see them receive Jesus and then get baptized.
You don't count as the 1st generation.
No.
Oh, you better get healthy then.
No, so you're talking, the math on that, I'd have to be about 100 years old.
Yeah.
And so that's many years. That means health.
Yeah.
I need to get out of any health ruts I'm in. Health has to become a very important piece. I need to stay eating well, sleeping well, exercising well. Health needs to be important. I can't just write it in. I need to be there. Because if I do all these other things and I die at 70 years old, then I didn't hit that goal. And then a second component is I need to be available, be home, be discipling my children. And then when the next generation comes, I'm a part of discipling my grandchildren. And my children are discipling their own children, and so on. You get the 3rd generation. I have the opportunity to disciple and be a part of the lives of my great-grandchildren. And I'm still walking around because I'm in good health. And so there's a lot of things that this insinuates is that health is going to be something vital to my wife and I. And then following Jesus ourselves and always being a good example. There's not a lot of wiggle room. We need to continue to be the examples that we want to propagate through the generations. And so that kind of a thing, I think about everything I'm doing. Legacy, you can call that legacy, right? Everything I'm doing is going to have an impact generations down the road.
Yeah. And it's a long game too. So
it's
like,
very long.
It's not like, hey, Kenny graduated, we're done. Let's go back to being like everybody else. And it's like, you gotta keep striving for that improvement, and then holding that grace too. Like,
well, you ever hear the stories of the people in their deathbed? You ask them, so what's your biggest regret? And it's painful. There's people that have written books on this. Like, what do they say? What are the common answers? And they never say like we were joking before the episode started. How good you do at how great you were at your office, how many reports you completed. It's how much impact you have in a business you ran. No. They always say, I regret that I didn't spend more time with my kids. It's cats in the cradle. It's all the stuff that they wish they would have done. When you get to the end of your life, you realize what was really important. So I'm like, why don't I just make those things important now?
Yeah, no one's ever said, man, I wish I would have checked more emails.
Right, yeah.
That's not a thing someone says at their deathbed.
Man, I wish I got an A on that book report.
Exactly.
Like, I don't care about that book report.
I wish I started that one more podcast.
Yeah. And it just, the time spent with people is what matters most. And somebody had shared that with me that, when we're talking about like our walk in our faith as Christians, that it's not how many times do you go to church. It's not how many times you pray. It's not how much you give to the church. In the end, it's all about people. And, who are the closest people we need to be pouring into? It's, us as parents, pouring into our kids, pouring into each other as parents. And then at some point, you trust that the kids go on and then pour into the next generation. So no pressure, Kenny.
So on the way, on the flight from Philadelphia to Atlanta a couple of days ago, they were teasing me because you get on the airplane, it's 5:25 takeoff, and I meet this incredible friend. His name is Mike Eddy. So Mike, if you're out there listening to this, you're like, wait, I talked to that guy in the airplane. Now I'm being talked about on a podcast. Mike Eddy, 70 years old. He's got 7 children, 19 grandchildren, and we talked the entire flight from Philadelphia to Atlanta.
Wow.
I have not done that much.
This was 2 hours?
2 hours straight through.
And here's the thing, I was sitting in the middle of them too. So I was just stuck, like leaning back.
So were you stuck like a cat looking at a laser light?
Exactly, like back and forth.
Man,
but it was...
You had like a buff neck by the end.
See, they're still making fun of me. This is the roasting of Dad. Yeah. But the part that I absolutely love, just listening to his story, his life story, and to see he's built a successful financial planning wealth advisor company, and he's out traveling with friends all over Europe. He's coming back home to see his 19 grandchildren. He also his family has been able to stay together all in the Atlanta area. So there's not many of them that have left. It's not like I have 7 kids in 7 different states. All of his grandchildren can come to their house on Sunday for brunch or after church. And then the thing he told me, he writes some kind of an article, a newsletter, I don't remember all the details of it, but one of the questions was like, Mike, what's the meaning of life? And he has a lot of perspective. He's a fellow Christian man. He's like, meaning of life. And you can go so many different directions with this. And he has explained he's got friends that view this differently, how they view success, how they view the meaning of life. And he says to him, it's relationships.
Yeah.
It's just simple. It's relationships.
It's all about people.
Yeah.
It's all about people.
The secret to being a great leader? Relationships. Treating your people like people, not cogs on a wheel. And that's coming from a guy who was a military leader. Like, my team felt the safest, were willing to do the most for the mission when I treated them like a human being, a smart human being who can make their own decisions, given the right information, given all the information to process, and then given my intent. This is what I need to get done. This is what we have to work with. And the ones who felt motivated and trusted me, I felt that they had that connection there. We're like, yes, we'll go knock this out. And then they'll go above and beyond. And you're like, wow. And then the ones I did not have good rapport with, which was only like one guy really, he would just find a way to disappear for an hour or two. And then we'd all go looking for him. I'm like, come on. I can't say his name because, well, I'm not on Facebook anymore. So his name is, no, kidding.
It's vital. I mean, we're involved in ministry for building men called the Royal Rangers at our church. It's a very active ministry. It's global. And I can remember situations. He was younger. He's been involved in that. He's reached the highest point, which is called the GMA. It's the equivalent of an Eagle Scout for Boy Scouts.
Yeah. Okay.
And I remember just situations like the opposite of that, what you just mentioned with the military. There's boys that were kind of troublemakers, but they were the leaders of the pack.
Yeah.
And if I went in there and just started telling them, hey, boys, you got to do this because I'm the authority figure, right? I'm the adult. They wouldn't listen.
No.
But when I would go connect with them and just get to know them, like tell me about your family, what do you like to do, and just connect with them, earn their trust, earn their respect. And then when I would ask them to do something, they would start listening. And better yet, when other kids weren't listening to me, they would go, hey, listen to Commander Ken. And they would fight for me. They were on my side. Yeah. And it was that relationship, the connecting with them as a person, getting to know them, showing like the expression, people don't care how much you know.
Yeah.
Until they know how much you care, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's what they teach people who are going through school to learn how to be teachers. That phrase right there. So Kenny, question for you is, what's something that you've learned from your dad that he may not know you learned from him that has just resonated with you whenever you encounter any kind of issue in life?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
When I was a new leader, I believed I had to do it all and know it all. This mindset created tension within my team, lowering morale and stifling growth. But I soon realized that a different approach was needed, a way to liberate my teams and empower them to thrive. Through my experiences, I developed a proven framework called TENT. It stands for Trust Building, Empowering, Navigating, and Thriving Together. With TENT, I help leaders expel employee dissatisfaction and combat high turnover rates. I teach them the skills and tactics necessary to create a positive and engaging work environment. Are you ready to embark on this journey of transformation? Join me and discover the power of TENT. Together, we can create workplaces where both leaders and employees flourish and ultimately create lives worth living in their faith, family, and career. Go check out my website at btrimpact.com and learn more about bringing TENT to your organization. Now, on with the show.
Ooh, that's a hard question.
Yes, it is.
It is a hard question.
Now I'm going to edit this and it'll sound like you came up with the answer like that.
Yes. It's going to make you sound so smart.
Right? Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Buying
The
time
power
right
of
now.
editing.
He's buying time.
Yes. All right. We're talking about like relationships and people. So like that's definitely something. Just watching him interact with people and the way he does things. It's never to take things. It's always giving. It's the giving. Like I've been digging into like self-help books recently, and I'm seeing a consistent thread of the key to success is giving, having relationships with people. Like it's a pretty big thing, and I feel like that's something I've definitely learned. And there's definitely parts where my dad has taught me like outright all this stuff, but like example is one of the best teachers too.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because I think with my own kids especially, like they never really did what I said. They definitely did what I did.
You got to practice what you preach.
Yeah. And I mean, right down to now, those who are listening don't see this, but in the Army, we have this gesture we call the knife hand, because it's not polite to point in the Army. It's not polite to point anywhere. So you have your fingers all together and you point like that. Hey, I need you to go knock out this, or I need you to go do that. And so we call it knife hand because it's like a knife cutting through things. Well, it turns out my first couple of years being a parent, I was also Sergeant Dugan. So I pointed a lot like that, just out of habit. And one day we're driving somewhere and our kids are fighting in the back seat. They're arguing. Like my daughter's 2, my son is 4, something like that. Maybe 3 and 5, but they're real little. And I don't know what they're arguing about. But I hear my son yell to her, my daughter, who's younger, and like he says, "Didn't you hear me say no?" And in the rearview mirror, I see this little hand going across, this knife hand, this 5-year-old boy knife hand going across like that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, my son just did knife hand. And as soon as I was thinking that, I hear this 3-year-old little girl voice say, "Didn't you hear me say yes?" And her knife hand went the other way. And so they were like overlapping knife hands, and I just started dying. I had to pull over. I was laughing so hard. And my wife's like, "What?" I'm like, they just knife-handed each other in that argument. She goes, "No way."
That is hilarious.
And so my wife was like, you probably need to stop doing that. And I'm like, I know, they just knife-handed each other. It's crazy. Didn't you hear me say no? Didn't you hear me say yes? And they, oh my gosh, I still crack up about it. They don't remember doing that, but it's seared in my mind. Oh man. And we've talked about fatherhood. We talked about, how family is so important. Relationships are so important. We've tied it into leadership. We've tied it into parent. And from that, we're getting close to that time to wrap up. So I'm like, what's the thing I want to do? Normally what I'll do is I'll offer up the opportunity for you to have a final word of wisdom. So, since Ken already got one the last time he was on the show, Kenny, actually first, before we even get to that, what's on the horizon for you? Cause you're here at Podcast Movement, not just to hang out with Dad. I mean, you are, but, you're here actually with your own like name tag, and it has like a consulting or editing firm on it. Tell us about that, cause I want to hear a little bit about that. So it's like apple didn't fall far from the tree here.
All right. So I am running a podcast editing business called Outsource Your Podcast. And what I'm doing is people will give me their raw shows, sort of like this show, and I'll do everything basically from it. And I'll edit it, process it, and get it onto the host so that they don't have to think about it. Yeah. So I'm doing that, and I actually want to grow that out more eventually to have a team. I actually have a passion for real estate investing too. Okay. So I want to be able to grow my podcast editing business to fuel my real estate business.
Nice.
So I have two, but they're like one and the same.
Yeah.
So that's what I see in the future for myself. But I mean, we'll see where God takes me.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's multiple streams of income too. So
that's
really good. Yeah. So that is really cool is because there are people out there who they have a great message, but they have no confidence in their ability to handle technology. And then there are people who are like, hey, I can handle technology like nothing. And
because if you have a great message on a podcast, but you don't know how to communicate that through the podcast, it can make you not seem like the expert that you really are. Yeah. So it's by taking the maybe iffy audio files and you make them sound professional, but still really authentic as to who they are. It gives them that expertise and it makes them the authority in their industry. Nice. And then if people want to reach out to you to have you work on their show, where is the best way for them to go to get in contact with you? Probably my website, which is outsourceyourpodcast.com. That's simple. Right there. Yeah. I should have done that with my first website. I did crying over here. Right? I know, man. Yeah. You did good. You did good, Dad. All right. So what are your final words of wisdom for those listening in? Final words of wisdom. Yeah.
Maybe for the kids. How about the kids and people listening?
Yeah, listen to Gabriel from this morning's keynote, right? Let's start tapping into the next generation because they're growing up with these devices. This will probably be on YouTube, by the way. So, so Kenny, no pressure. Final words of wisdom to those listening in.
Probably it's related to what I was saying earlier. Like, relationships and people are key. Like, the key to anything is to build solid relationships, be talking to people, which is one of the biggest reasons I'm here. I'm here to connect with people and to really learn about them and to be giving to them, because people aren't interested in what you want. They're everybody's selfish, and it's a sad truth, but really by giving to people what they want, then they like you and they trust you. And that's really the key to building anything.
Now, I once heard from a 19-year-old, well, I didn't hear it directly from the 19-year-old because he had passed away from cancer, but I heard from his father that one of the things his son Hayden would say is why we need to take the word self out of self-help. And so hearing you say that, I'm
that
like,
is good.
Wow, there's something about our youth that they get it. They understand servant leadership. They understand the power of helping others and paying it forward and not expecting a payment in return. So that's really powerful. Kenny, thanks for dragging your dad back in here into the studio.
You're welcome.
Might have been the other way around, but and also special shout out to HubSpot. They have these 2 booths here at Podcast Movement, and so they're letting podcasters jump in here at 1 hour blocks, and I already used up my 1 hour block. We're actually using somebody else's. So whoever flaked on your 4:30 block at Podcast Movement, we thank you, because we got to have this conversation. Yeah. And yes, I mean, this is only day 2. I will be staking out this place, and every time there is a flake, I'm jumping in and taking opportunity. Unless you guys are doing it too.
We'll take shifts guarding it.
You get the 30-minute, I'll get on the hour. We got this. Yeah,
we're back on tomorrow.
Charlie Dooman's gonna be like, "Who are these guys? They're in here like half the time." Awesome. Well, guys, thanks so much for being on the show, and we'll just keep trucking along and living life to the fullest.
That was good. Thanks so much, Terry.
Now, I hope you got a lot of insights and inspiration from Ken and Kenny's story in this conversation. I know I did. I love these guys. I love talking with them. I'm friends with them. We stay in touch. All the good things. Now, you can check out the show notes at beyondtherut.com/350. And if you're looking for a way to map out your life so that you're choosing success on your terms in the areas of your faith, family, fitness, finances, and your future, then I recommend you buy a copy of my book, Beyond the Rut, Create a Life Worth Living in Your Faith, Family, and Career. It's available on Amazon. Just go to Amazon.com, search Beyond the Rut. Get yourself a copy. If you buy a copy, you get a free copy of the audiobook. There you go. Now, I'm glad you joined me this week. I look forward to joining you again on the next episode. But until then, go live life beyond the rut. Take care.